wasn't enough of a challenge, so I'm actually going to take a decade of financial hacks and condense that into 6 minutes. Okay, good intro slide here. We'll build that out. The only real key point here is that in any breach or any hack, you're in a time battle. The quicker you can detect it, the less damage there will be, the less exfiltration, the less loss of sensitive data. So I'm going to take 2 hacks about 8 years apart, and what you're going to see is eerily similar. You're going to see the breach, the reconnaissance, and then you're going to see the hackers start testing and evolving malware to come up with a production system. The only difference between these 2 hacks is basically the technology, the malware that they used. But other than that, they're going to look eerily similar. Okay, we'll go ahead and build this one out. First hack starts in July. The hackers found some unencrypted data, did a massive download, digested that, came back in November, and picked up with the exact date that the last download stopped, but now the data was all encrypted, either masked or encrypted. So they had to do something different to get the value. So they came back in May and now started testing a series of sniffers, trying to get to something that would capture the unencrypted transactions as they're flowing through the processor prior to being authorized by the bank and then encrypted for storage. And in retrospect, when you go back and do the forensics, you can see the hackers uploading a new sniffer every couple of days. They tried sniffers that dropped to files. They actually even tried a sniffer for a while that streamed the data out of the network, but that was too hard to manage. So finally, you see in October, they get to what we call a production system. He now had a very efficient sniffer. He turned the sniffer on, connected to a file, collect credit cards for 3 days, come back, ironically, almost on a production schedule. 3 days later, turn the sniffer off, pull the file, exfiltrate it, and connect it to a new sniffer. We detected the breach. Ironically, we kept, at the Secret Service request, we kept this hacker alive in the network for 19 days. Obviously couldn't let him keep downloading credit cards, so we ran an algorithm. Fortunately, we knew his download schedule, so we ran an algorithm about a half hour to an hour before he came in and downloaded that changed all the credit cards. Still passed loan checks, so they still looked valid to him. He never knew we were diddling with his credit cards. But that's not the message. The real message here is if you don't detect the hackers in your network, if you give them 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, they won't just do periodic downloads. They'll go into a production mode. Okay, next one. So this one is a much more recent breach. But you see essentially the same pattern. January, the intruders get in. These guys were so bold that they didn't even bother installing back doors for about 2 weeks. What they did, though, was they immediately installed a memory scraper. They needed to get at the processes in the servers that were handling the credit cards, you know, during that brief moment that the cards decrypted, processed, re-encrypted for transmission. So they started playing with developmental scrapers in February. In June, they went to another generation of developmental scrapers. In December, they're running a little bit behind schedule because, frankly, these guys typically are aiming for October and really November and December. They want the prime Christmas shopping season. That's when credit card volume just spikes amazingly. Now they were running a little behind schedule. They got their developmental 3 scraper in place, worked pretty good, so they immediately went to generation 1 in December, and then shortly after that, in January, went to generation 2. Again, this is why network security monitoring is so absolutely critical, because if you could have caught them at any point during that installation phase, you could have killed them before you started losing big time data. Thank you.